I never believed in fairy tale love until I met him, a 40-year-old billionaire, confident, charming, and completely unexpected in my ordinary life. He didn't just sweep me off my feet. He made me question everything I thought I knew about love, passion, and what it means to truly be seen. Before I dive into my story, hit that like button and subscribe if you love real, unexpected romance stories. You don't want to miss a single twist in this unbelievable journey. I'm 30, a Black woman who has always prided herself on being independent. I've built my life carefully, brick by brick, never relying on anyone else to define my worth. My mornings usually start the same way: a strong cup of coffee, emails, and the hum of the city outside my apartment window. I've got a tight group of friends who keep me laughing and grounded, and a job that challenges me without consuming me entirely. On the surface, life looks full, organized, even enviable. But underneath, I've always carried a quiet skepticism about love. I've loved before, and every time, I thought I knew what I wanted, only to realize I didn't. There was James, whose charm made me feel like the most special person in the world until he disappeared without explanation, leaving me questioning everything about my judgment. Then there was Marcus, who promised forever but crumbled when life demanded commitment. I guess you could say my heart has been both reckless and cautious, bruised yet stubbornly hopeful. Those experiences taught me that love isn't always kind, that sometimes it hurts more than it heals, and that trusting someone with your heart is a gamble, one I've become reluctant to take. Despite my guarded heart, I can't deny that there's a small, persistent voice inside me that yearns for something deeper, something beyond casual dates and predictable patterns. I want the kind of connection that makes the world fade away for a few moments, where someone truly sees you, not just the surface, but the layers beneath. But I've stopped actively looking for it. I've convinced myself that maybe true love is a luxury for other people, not someone like me, not in the way movies or books make it seem so effortless. Life, I decided, is better when measured and practical, when you guard your heart and keep expectations realistic. My daily routines, the laughter with friends, and the small victories at work have kept me comfortably distracted. I've convinced myself that independence is enough, that my happiness doesn't need anyone else's approval or presence. And in a way, it's true. I am content. Yet there's a subtle ache that I try not to notice, a quiet whisper that wonders if there's someone out there who could make me believe in romance again, someone who could make me feel the kind of love I've only read about, never experienced firsthand. I didn't expect anything to change. My life was complete in its predictability, safe in its solitude. Love, for me, had become a cautious idea rather than a vivid reality. And yet, even as I busied myself with work, friends, and the familiar routines that made life feel steady, I couldn't shake the faint, almost imperceptible hope that maybe, just maybe, something extraordinary was waiting for me, something that could break through my walls and make me see love in a way I had long stopped believing possible. I didn't see it coming. I wasn't looking for anything or anyone, but there he was, a man who seemed to belong to a different world entirely. 40 years old, white, and a billionaire. By the whispers I overheard in the room, he carried himself with a quiet confidence that made it impossible to look away. There was an ease in the way he spoke, a charm that felt effortless, but underneath, I thought I caught glimpses of something real, something that suggested he wasn't just another person hiding behind wealth and status. The first time our eyes met, I felt that strange mix of nervousness and disbelief that happens when the impossible feels within reach. He was impeccably dressed, of course, tailored to perfection, exuding a world I had never truly inhabited. And there I was, in my simple outfit, feeling almost out of place, painfully aware of the differences that separated us. But instead of arrogance, there was a warmth in his gaze that made the gap between our worlds feel smaller than it should have been. It was disarming. I remember the first words he spoke to me, light and easy, yet precise, as though he measured every syllable but didn't want to seem too calculated. He asked me about my work, my life, as if he genuinely wanted to know me. Not just the surface level polite questions most people toss around at first encounters, but questions that hinted at curiosity, attention, and thoughtfulness. I was cautious, of course. Billionaires rarely approached me like this, not the ones I'd read about or seen in movies. But there was something different about him, something that pulled me in despite every instinct screaming to stay guarded. I tried to keep my composure, steady my heartbeat, remind myself that this could be fleeting, just a moment in passing. Yet the more he spoke, the more I noticed the subtle vulnerability in his eyes, the faint crease in his forehead when he laughed, the small gestures that made him human beyond the title, the money, the privilege. I felt the tug of curiosity, a cautious excitement that whispered, maybe this could be more than just an ordinary encounter. I was drawn in despite my careful walls. Every word, every glance seemed to chip away at the skepticism I had built over the years. Nervousness danced alongside a thrill I hadn't felt in a long time, and I couldn't help the disbelief that perhaps, just perhaps, life had thrown me a chance to experience something extraordinary. I tried to remind myself to stay grounded, to protect my heart, but it was becoming harder by the second. This man, so far removed from my world, yet somehow so present in that moment, was already making me question everything I thought I knew about love, attraction, and the possibilities waiting just beyond the ordinary. Even then, I didn't realize how much that brief encounter would change the course of my life, how deeply it would pull me into a world I hadn't dared to imagine, and how dangerously exciting it would feel to let myself get lost in it. Getting to know him felt like stepping into a world I didn't belong to, yet strangely, one that was starting to feel familiar. Our conversations were the kind that lingered long after they ended, the kind that make you replay every word, every inflection in your mind. He asked questions that mattered about my dreams, my fears, the little things that shape a person's day-to-day life. And I realized something startling. He was actually listening, truly listening, not just nodding politely, but absorbing every detail, remembering things I hadn't expected anyone to notice. He had this way of making ordinary moments feel significant. A casual text from him could brighten my day. A small, thoughtful gesture. A coffee delivered to my office on a particularly stressful morning. A handwritten note slipped into a book he thought I'd like. Made me feel seen in a way I hadn't felt in years. There was humor, too, subtle but sharp, that caught me off guard. We'd find ourselves laughing over the most random things, and for a while, all the walls I'd built around my heart felt a little less necessary. I started noticing how differently he treated me compared to anyone else I'd ever dated. There was no pretense, no expectation that I conformed to his world or his lifestyle. He seemed genuinely fascinated by the life I'd built for myself, by the choices I'd made, and the perspective I carried with me every day. For the first time in a long time, I felt respected, not for what I could offer or for how I made him look, but simply for being me. And I couldn't help but start questioning some of the rules I had set for myself about love. Did I really deserve someone like him? Did anyone ever? Or had I just been telling myself stories to avoid the risk of being vulnerable again? Of course, our worlds were vastly different, and that difference was impossible to ignore. He moved in spaces I'd only glimpsed from afar, high-profile events, international travel, luxury that made my practical life feel small in comparison. At first, I felt a flicker of intimidation, a quiet tension that reminded me how far apart we came from. But at the same time, it fascinated me. I found myself drawn not just to him, but to the perspective he offered, to the way he approached life with confidence, and to the way he invited me to see things differently without ever demanding I change who I was. Small surprises became a way he spoke to me without words. A book, a favorite snack, a note about something he'd remembered me mention in passing. It all built a quiet tension in my chest, a pull I couldn't fully resist. My heart, cautious but curious, started to open up. I realized I was allowing myself to imagine a life that didn't follow the rules I'd always thought I had to live by. And though I tried to stay grounded, to remind myself to move slowly, I couldn't deny the growing thrill of possibility. The sense that maybe, just maybe, this was exactly the kind of love I had been waiting for without even knowing it. As time went on, our connection started to deepen in ways I hadn't anticipated. What began as curiosity and fascination slowly turned into something far more intense, a quiet certainty that this man was becoming an irreplaceable part of my life. We talked about everything and nothing, from childhood memories to dreams for the future, and each conversation felt like peeling back a layer of ourselves, discovering shared values and unexpected similarities. The more I learned about him, the more I realized he was interested not in my surface, but in the parts I usually kept hidden. There was a vulnerability in him that made me lower my own guard. He would share fears and regrets that most people would never admit, and somehow it made him stronger, more human, more real. I found myself laughing at his humor, feeling my chest tighten at his seriousness, and experiencing a thrill I hadn't felt in years. Our chemistry wasn't just physical, although there was that too. It was emotional, mental, and somehow spiritual. Every message, every call, every brief moment together felt layered with meaning. He also had this uncanny ability to notice the small things about me that I thought no one else saw. The way I hesitated before speaking sometimes, the subtle gestures I made when I was nervous, even the little phrases I used repeatedly. He remembered them all. These attentions, small as they seemed, began to erode the defenses I had built around my heart. I started questioning my old rules about love and what I thought I deserved. Could I really let someone in fully, without fear or doubt? Could someone love me exactly as I am, without wanting me to change? Of course, there were moments that reminded me just how different our lives were. I was still living in my carefully managed routine, while he moved in a world of private jets, luxury events, and wealth that I could barely imagine. Sometimes I would catch myself silently wondering if I could ever truly belong in that space, if I could ever navigate a world so foreign without losing myself. And yet, instead of intimidating me, his world fascinated me. I was drawn to it, but more than that, I was drawn to him. The way he made me feel valued, curious, and alive. Our gestures of affection, simple as they were, began to carry weight. A surprise message on a stressful day, a thoughtful gift that showed he listened, even the smallest acts of consideration. They all built a tension in my chest, a mix of longing, excitement, and cautious hope. Every interaction pulled me closer. Every laugh and shared secret strengthened the connection. I couldn't ignore it anymore. I was falling for him in ways I had sworn were impossible, and I couldn't deny the thrill that came with imagining a life with someone so extraordinary, not just in wealth or status, but in heart. By the time I realized it, the line between caution and desire had blurred. I was opening up, letting myself feel, and discovering that true connection wasn't about perfection or control. It was about trust, vulnerability, and the courage to let someone see you completely. And in that, I started to believe, for the first time in a long while, that maybe love could be everything I'd secretly hoped it would be. Just when I thought I could finally breathe, reality reminded me that nothing worth having ever comes without its complications. Loving him, I quickly realized, wasn't going to be easy. Our worlds were still so different. He lived in a bubble of luxury and expectation, while I navigated a life built on independence and practicality. That contrast, which had once intrigued me, now brought moments of tension I hadn't anticipated. Simple things, like how he approached social events or the way people treated him around me, made me feel exposed, like I was constantly measuring myself against a standard I wasn't sure I could reach. Friends, too, had opinions, and not always the kind you want to hear. They worried I was moving too fast, that I was getting swept away by charm and money rather than substance. Some even questioned his intentions, suggesting that I was entering a world that could swallow me whole. I wanted to dismiss their worries, to tell myself I knew my own heart, but the doubts began to creep in. Could someone like him really love someone like me? Could this connection withstand the scrutiny, the differences, the weight of expectation that came with his life? Then there were moments that tested us more directly: misunderstandings, minor mistakes, and assumptions. Things that should have been simple suddenly felt magnified because of who he was and what he represented. I caught myself overthinking his actions, reading into the smallest gestures, questioning whether his attention was genuine or just another performance. And yet, even in those moments, there was something that kept me tethered to him: the unmistakable feeling that he was committed to understanding me, to bridging the gap between our lives rather than widening it. Internally, I wrestled with fear, insecurity, and the remnants of old heartbreaks. I questioned whether I could truly belong in his world without losing myself, or whether my independence would clash too violently with his lifestyle. But at the same time, I recognized something I hadn't admitted before: love that matters will demand risk, vulnerability, and courage. If I wanted this, I had to embrace the uncertainty, to trust him, and perhaps most importantly, to trust myself. And yet, despite the tension, there were moments of profound clarity and joy. Little acts of love and reassurance reminded me why I had opened my heart in the first place. A whispered apology, a considerate gesture, a conversation where he admitted his own insecurities. All of it brought a grounding honesty to the relationship. I began to see that the trials were not barriers, but tests of resilience, reminders that love isn't about perfection. It's about persistence, empathy, and a willingness to grow together. By the end of those weeks, I realized that every challenge, every moment of doubt, only strengthened the bond we were building. Love, I was learning, isn't the absence of difficulty. It's the choice to stay despite it. And in that choice, I discovered something beautiful. The deeper the challenges, the more real, profound, and transformative this connection could become. It wasn't going to be easy, but I began to understand that nothing truly extraordinary ever is. It was in the quiet, unexpected moments that I realized just how real his love for me was. Not in grand declarations or extravagant displays, though there were those too, but in the subtle ways he showed up, ways that made me feel valued, seen, and cherished in a way I had never experienced before. There was a consistency to his attention, a kind of reliability that made my cautious heart start to trust again. Every time I caught him remembering something I said weeks ago, or anticipating a need I hadn't even voiced, it chipped away at the walls I had spent years building. I remember the first time he did something so simple, yet so profoundly touching, that I couldn't hold back my tears. It wasn't an expensive gift or a dramatic gesture. It was the way he paused his busy schedule to sit with me, truly listen, and celebrate an achievement of mine that had seemed small to the world but monumental to me. in that moment, I felt not just loved, but understood. I realized he didn't just admire me, he respected me, my journey, and everything that made me who I am. And that, more than any amount of wealth or charm, made me believe that this was something different. There were also public moments where he didn't just include me in his world. He made it clear I belonged. Invitations to events, introductions to people who mattered, and the way he spoke about me to others without hesitation, all of it carried a weight that I hadn't expected, but secretly craved. It was validation, yes, but it was deeper than that. It was proof that he was willing to stand by me openly, proudly, and unapologetically. It made me realize that love isn't just about private moments, it's about choosing each other in the world, even when it's easier not to. Of course, I still had moments of doubt, moments when the old fears crept back in, but they became fewer and farther between. Each time, he met my hesitation with patience, reassurance, and gentle persistence. He never demanded, never pressured. Instead, he proved that love could be both tender and powerful, that it could lift me up without changing who I was, that it could challenge me to grow while still honoring my independence. The small surprises, the thoughtful gestures, the unwavering attention, they built a crescendo in my heart I hadn't thought possible. I started to see myself through his eyes, worthy, deserving, and capable of receiving love on a scale I hadn't imagined for myself. I began to believe that true romance isn't a fleeting spark. It's a slow burning fire that ignites when two people see, respect, and choose each other consistently. By the time I fully allowed myself to feel, to trust, to embrace this love, I realized that it wasn't just about him proving himself to me. It was about both of us proving that love, when nurtured with patience, respect, and sincerity, can overcome differences, insecurities, and past wounds. And in that realization, I found a freedom I had never known, the freedom to love fully, fearlessly, and without reservation. Looking back, it feels almost surreal how far I've come. I went from a cautious 30-year-old skeptical about love to someone who finally believes in it in its fullest, most unexpected form. Loving him has changed me in ways I didn't anticipate. It hasn't been about losing myself or compromising my independence. It's been about discovering a deeper version of myself, one that can open fully to love and still stand strong in who I am. The walls I once built for protection have been replaced with boundaries that feel empowering, boundaries that allow intimacy without fear. Life with him isn't perfect, it never was meant to be, but it's real, honest, and profoundly satisfying. We navigate our differences, laugh at the things that could otherwise divide us, and find joy in the intersections of our worlds. I've learned to appreciate the balance of excitement and stability, luxury and simplicity, freedom and commitment. And through it all, I've realized that love isn't about finding someone who fits neatly into your life. It's about finding someone who challenges, supports, and inspires you to grow while choosing you every single day. The journey hasn't just been about him proving himself to me. It's been about me proving myself to myself. I've learned that I deserve someone who sees me, all of me, and chooses to love me openly and unapologetically. I've learned that vulnerability doesn't make me weak. It makes me human, capable of experiencing depth and connection in ways I had long thought impossible. And I've learned that love, the kind that makes your chest ache with possibility and fills your soul with hope, is worth the risks, the fears, and even the moments of doubt. I still remember the quiet mornings we share now, the long conversations that stretch into the night, and the small gestures that mean more than words ever could. I've come to see that love doesn't need grand declarations to be extraordinary. It needs consistency, thoughtfulness, and the willingness to be present. It's in the way he listens when I'm talking, the way he encourages my dreams, the way he challenges me to embrace life fully without ever asking me to be anyone other than myself. Those moments, small as they seem, are the moments that define what true romance feels like. Now I wake up with a sense of anticipation rather than doubt, excitement rather than caution. I've allowed myself to hope, to dream, and to believe in a love I never thought I'd experience. And the best part? I know that this is just the beginning. We've built something strong, something resilient, and something uniquely ours, something that has the power to endure because it's grounded in respect, authenticity, and a commitment to choosing each other every day. I've learned that love can surprise you when you least expect it. It can enter quietly, softly, and transform the way you see yourself, the world, and the future. And as I look ahead, I know one thing for certain. I am exactly where I'm supposed to be, with the person who has shown me that true romance isn't a fairy tale. It's real, it's powerful, and it's mine.